Welcome to the second in our interviews in our birth story series. So I'm Shakina Lee, Rites of Passage facilitator and a kahuna massage therapist in my business called Honouring the Feminine. And each and every birth is a rite of passage, and each and every birth has a birth story that has medicine to share, not just for the mothers involved, but for other people. So today I'm joined by Rachel DeRay. She's an integrative and endorsed clinical midwife of over 10 years. And welcome. Welcome, Rachel. And my first question that I wanted to ask is, what is an integrative midwife?
Well, that's a very good question. When I was looking into trying to define my role in midwifery, I was looking into integrative medicine and how that blends modern medicine with complementary alternative therapies like acupuncture, Chinese medicine, meditation, energy work, massage, etc. So since my background before midwifery was very much those kinds of things.
It was. She's amazing at those sorts of things.
Then obviously I wanted to just blend all of those complementary medicine therapies in with the way that I practice as a midwife in a hospital setting.
Yeah, amazing. So to begin with, I'd love if you could share one of your favourite, almost memorable birth stories, because this woman has, supported thousands and thousands of mothers over her 10-year career. She's got lots of stories to share.
I do.
I'm just asking for one of your favourites.
Yeah, that was a really tricky one when you asked me to speak on this, because obviously I do have thousands and they're all memorable in their own way and in their own right. And some of them really just blend in together because there has been so many.
I can imagine.
Having said that, there was one, and I have had permission from the woman to actually speak about this today because obviously confidentiality and privacy, I can't actually disclose too much information. But it's a really great story on an integrative birthing way. So the woman, who's a dear friend and colleague of mine, actually asked me to be her midwife, which was felt very honoured to do that. She had everyone there from obstetrics to midwifery, and she also had a really dear friend of hers who is a GP and a practicing witch.
Nice.
So it was really
bringing witchcraft.
Absolutely.
To the birthing room.
Absolutely. And it was just such a magical experience. I've got goosebumps just even thinking about it. So this birth room, which I'm used to seeing quite medicalised with all of its IV poles and CTG machines, was set up in such a beautiful, sacred way. We had a big medicine wheel on the floor, we had crystals and lights and battery-operated candles, because naked flame and oxygen don't really mix real well together.
But there's a way, there's always a way to get the things that you need and want.
Right. And she was drumming and singing.
Oh my God.
It was just really beautiful. And we had an amazing experience. It was just really lovely just to see that birthing room transformed. My friend had a really great birthing experience, and she had all of us there, from witches to doctors.
So one of my favourite things about that story, and there's lots of favourite things, is that it gives permission to women to realise that they don't have to have a home birth to have those sorts of things in their birthing experience. Like, I've done lots of birth stuff, and even I would have been thinking, medicine wheel or drumming, they're not going to let me do that in a hospital setting. Yeah. And yet here was one of your colleagues
having that.
Absolutely.
And rocking it. She absolutely rocked it. We all rocked it. It was great.
I bet you did. Oh my God.
Some women do need to actually birth in hospital for whatever reasons going on for them and their experience. So I mean, it's great that you can bring that into a birth suite.
And some women, especially with their first birth, might feel safer doing it in a hospital environment, which is actually, we love that. That's what the integrative midwifery is all about, is being able to bring those two things together to have the optimal birth outcome. Amazing. So during birth, usually there's that moment where a woman will surrender completely to be able to bring the baby out. Is that something that you recognise happening?
Yeah, it is. It's at different stages for different women, and it really just depends on what women bring to their birthing experience as well, where they've come from, what their background is. Generally, I see that just right at that moment of when the baby's head's crowning and the woman really just, she's gotten herself through the whole labour process, which she's been so focused on and fired up for, and then that moment of complete surrender when everything is stretching up nicely just to allow a graceful entry of Bubby. That's usually when I see that look in a woman's eye of, okay, I really just want this bit to be over, but I know that I just need to absolutely surrender to this moment of intensity so that my baby can come out very gracefully and gently.
And just let go.
And just let go, exactly. And I usually find that that's the time when women just love that little bit of extra support. Like a kind word of, you've got this, I'm here with you. Or yesterday I was in a birth and I could see I wasn't actually the active participant in that birth. I was really there for support for the woman. And I could see she was really working hard. I just undid her buttons and I just started fanning her with her hospital chart. And she loved it. You know, it was something that was there for her, not just coaching on the whole birthing process. So that gave me those simple, tiny little things just bring me so much joy. And for the women as well.
And, you know, it can look different for different women, that moment of surrender. For myself, I didn't end up having a natural birth. And, you know, I had a few moments of surrender. The first was when I had to go in and be induced, because that was definitely, you know, wasn't in my birth plan. But that moment when I realised that, and it wasn't until afterwards that I realised it was my moment of complete surrender, was when I'd been wheeled into that room to have the emergency cesarean. They were, you know, pumping me full of drugs, and I started to cry and shake and sob, and I had to let go of how I thought it should be, and that sense of failure that I had, that I tried so hard to keep on track to what I thought was going to be the optimal experience, not just for myself, but in bringing my baby into the world. And, you know, it felt so traumatic afterwards, and it took me many years, which is why, you know, I went on my self-healing discovery and where I created the Motherhood Rite of Passage program. But it was, you know, that was one of the catalyst moments where it felt like trauma, and for years it was trauma, and yet now I see it as one of those greatest gifts, that surrendering.
Absolutely.
It
really is.
Oh,
no.
Birth. No. The mystery of birth.
It's such a mystery. It's such a journey.
So, recent research, and this is Australian research, shows that 1 in 3 women do actually suffer from birth trauma, and 1 in 10 women suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder after they've given birth to their child. Is there anything that you know or that you can recommend that can help minimise birth trauma in that hospital environment?
It's so personal, like we've already touched on before. I mean, I would say potentially just please don't put all of your eggs in one basket. It really doesn't matter if you've got how much good karma you've got, how well intentioned you are, how nice to other people you are, how deeply you really want your birth to go in a particular way, and that could be a natural birth or a planned cesarean that ends up being a vaginal birth. I mean, it just depends on what the woman wants for herself. I just always say to women, just please just go with whatever presents itself. So if one thing presents itself, you can always ask your caregiver, your midwife, your obstetrician, what's the alternative? Can I have some more time? What could I do next? What else could I do? And then just wait for the next thing to present and the next thing to present. I think then you feel like you're more in control because you're asking questions, you're being part of the decision-making process. Please don't feel like you can't ask questions. We really encourage you to ask questions and be involved in your birthing process, because at the end of the day, we're the professionals, but it's your body and it's your baby and it's your family. So it's really important for you as women and as a mother to really just get involved in that process. Now, of course, in a true obstetric emergency, it's very different. We're kind of telling you what we're doing as we're doing it, because
you're saving lives.
We're saving lives, exactly.
And
exactly.
So, and that's a conversation that you can have afterwards. And we do understand in those emergency moments that they're the sorts of things that have to happen. And we've spoken before about that, feeling like there's that perfect recipe for the perfect birth. If you just do this, this, and this, then I'm going to get this kind of birth. Yeah. And yet, in all of the years that I've done my research, and you would have noticed too, is that two women could, plan and prepare in exactly the same way and have two completely different birth experiences. Or two women could have the same birth experience and feel completely differently about it. One could feel traumatized and another couldn't. Some want to have those elected cesareans, and others want to be able to, free birth at home. These are the sorts of, polarities or, extremes. Not that they're extreme, but you understand what I'm saying. These are the shades of grey that each of us, want, that there's these different sorts of experiences that we can have. So, I think just to add to that, even the same woman can experience different birthing experiences each pregnancy. Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Whether it's 1, 2, or 5.
Right? Yeah. And that's the thing. And we can go into it, for subsequent births, whether it's second, third, fourth, thinking, I've got this, and something happens.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think in order to help reduce those rates of that PTSD, I think it's really important, and this is what we speak about with postnatal depression, is engaging with a medical professional or a counsellor or a psychologist or your support network. I usually just say to women, please debrief your birth with somebody that was at your birth, your midwife, your obstetrician, your support people. And I think sometimes it's important to do so, because not everyone understands the reasons why we needed to do something. And if that medical professional can say, well, we actually needed to do this because this was happening, then maybe women will process things a bit differently. But otherwise, I usually say, women are entitled to 10 free psych sessions per calendar year if you go and see a GP for a mental health plan. Please don't leave it, because if you leave it, like a lot of us women, we like to think we're on top of this, we're superwoman, we're going to be a great everything to everyone all the time. I think it's really important just to talk about it, because otherwise you end up so far down the rabbit hole, and then families break down and mental health breaks down, and all you really need to do is just talk it out.
And we're allowed to be vulnerable during this period. And that's why, that's what the baby moon and that 4th trimester is about, is being able to be vulnerable in those places, especially if you've never been vulnerable and you've always been that strong woman. It is an opportunity to transform. It's why it's a rite of passage. You are not going to be the caterpillar anymore. You're going to be that butterfly. So it does take me perfectly into the next question I wanted to ask you.
Oh, great.
Is what kind of impact you think the chosen support people have?
Loads.
We kind of know that, but I did want to go deeper into the kind of impact that they can have and what you would recommend there.
So in the hospital that I work in, and I know in most hospitals, in the birth suite setting, they generally allow for 2 support people. And obviously there can be exceptions depending on the circumstances, and you need to just work that out with the hospital where you're birthing or wherever you choose to birth. Essentially, 2 support people are great, because you can have your partner there if you'd like, and then somebody else who may be like a doula or a midwife or a friend who's birthed before. I really notice, obviously, a difference in women whose support people are the ones who, the partner is sitting on the chair as far away from the woman as possible, and maybe reading a newspaper and not really engaging or supporting, or even getting her a glass of water. And then the other birth support people are saying, come on, hurry up, you know, like, I wanted to get to things, and how long is this going to take, and what's happening. That just is not called for.
No, it's not conducive.
It's not conducive.
Optimal birth outcome.
Definitely not.
No.
And that's when labour dystocia can happen. Yeah. That's when all of those yummy cocktail hormones stop, and there's a fight and flight response, and it really can affect a woman's labour and the way she progresses. There has been some times where I've had to actually ask support people to leave the room, because the woman is my main priority, the woman and her baby. And if I see that what the people in the room are affecting her birthing process, then I just have to protect that space for her.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that a good support person will do too, is being able to protect that space, understand what the birthing woman's birth plan is, to be able to ask questions on her behalf as well if she's definitely in that labour land place and isn't so coherent, because, you know, there is that part where you say, yes, ask questions along the way, but if you're in it, you're in that trancey in-between space, there's not so often a logical, rational mind.
Absolutely.
Right? So having those support people, and having people, I guess, that you feel comfortable with every day in your life, not feeling like you have to ask this particular person because they're going to feel bad if you don't. And that can even extend to partners. If your partner isn't the most supportive of people in that environment, have that conversation with them. They might prefer not to be there. They might, really. And being able to have people there who are there for you.
Very important.
Yeah, and having those support people there during the experience, but also after the experience, in that postnatal time, that's what helps minimise the postnatal depression and those feelings of trauma.
Absolutely.
Yeah, during it. So thank you. I really, that's an important one for me, I think, and for many of you.
Yeah.
So there was this one other beautiful question I wanted to ask, because I recall you mentioning how babies are actually quite an active participant in the birthing experience. And I remember thinking, I've never really thought about that dance, you know, between mother and baby before, that relationship that they have during labour. Can you speak just a little bit more to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, I think everyone gets so fixated on the woman and the mother pushing and doing all of the hard work, and that the baby just happens to just come out at the end because the woman did everything. And please don't get me wrong, women work very hard to push their babies out. But what I would just like to add is that the tone of the baby, so baby's muscles play a big part in things. They have this really primal instinct of knowing how to actually be born, just like the primal instinct of the breast crawl afterwards.
Yes.
They know how to do things because they need to survive, right? So babies just tuck their little chin in and then wriggle their head a bit as they're coming through the birth canal. Obviously, some babies are a little bit naughty and they like to come out as stargazers.
What do you mean by that?
So when a baby is posterior, instead of facing down towards the bed or wherever the woman is, facing down, they're looking up.
Stargazers, what a beautiful. Oh, tricky little babies, aren't they?
So obviously that part of the head is not the greatest fit through the pelvis. But they're generally, if baby's looking down or even to the side, then that is the best fit through the mother's pelvis. So obviously the tone and baby just kicking and wriggling and moving down that birth canal they essentially help to be born.
They're helping to birth themselves, which is amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It is.
All right, I loved all of this. I just wanted to end with one last question. So is there anything else that you'd like to share with us about any part of that birthing journey, whether it's conception, pregnancy, labour or postnatal, that you know is part of your expertise or that you feel would help the women watching, you know, the mothers that are here with us today?
There is. So essentially, I think I would really like to touch on inductions of labour for a non-medical reason. So obviously there is, if a woman needs to be induced because of something is going on, she's a high-risk pregnancy for whatever reason, I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about, I'm not really sleeping that well at night anymore and I just want this to be done, so can I have an induction?
Okay, yeah.
I'm talking about those maternal request inductions.
Yeah.
Now, there's more research coming out recently to say that in the last couple of weeks of gestation, of when baby's still inside the womb and cooking nicely, that there's brain development. The brain actually gets a little bit bigger in size, and there's a research paper that just came out actually only a few days ago to say that those babies that get that little bit extra brain growth, they've followed this on a longitudinal study to show that that brain then continues to develop as the child develops. Now, obviously, a bigger brain helps to store more information and work a bit better and all these kinds of things.
All those clever things.
And there's also another research that came out recently to say that we're still trying to understand sleep and what sleep actually means to us and to babies and inside and outside. So there's some research that came out recently to say that in the last few weeks, babies will have up to 16 hours of REM sleep. Now, we would never have that kind of amount of REM sleep ever again. 16 hours a day, sorry.
No,
16 hours a day.
Only babies did that when they came out.
Oh, yeah, that's not going to happen. But they're thinking now from this research is that the reason why they're having these 16 hours of REM sleep in a 24-hour period is so that they can turn on all of those neuro pathways.
Yeah, wow.
They all get
That's
switched
incredible.
on.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking if we bring on labour that's not quite ready to go, and I'm talking within safe windows and low-risk women and pregnancies, I'm thinking it's really important for your child's future development just to wait that little bit extra. I think that's really quite important.
And that extra sleep, that 16 hours they're saying is happening towards the end of, full term.
Yes.
Is that when some women can think, oh, my baby's not moving as much anymore? Like, does that happen or is that something completely different?
Well, that's a bit of a tricky situation.
Yeah,
because
you really need to be onto that.
If you're concerned about babies' movements, obviously have it investigated.
Yeah.
I think that's just the best thing to do.
Absolutely.
Because we don't know for sure if baby's quietening down because of that REM cycle or because there's something more sinister going on. So I think please, don't have that mindset. If you're worried, just use your woman's intuition, use your mother's intuition, and just speak to the person who's caring for you, your midwife, your obstetrician, the hospital, the birth centre, whoever it is. Just speak with them.
Trusting your instincts, it's just so important,
so
isn't it? And being able to ask those questions, having carers who you can ask those questions of. And I know that you've had all sorts of people turn up with all sorts of things that you wouldn't expect. And look, in the end, it's better to do so and know that everything's okay than to feel like you're being silly or overreacting or any of that stuff, and for there actually to be something wrong. Yeah,
because we don't want you to be sending stress hormones to Bubby either. It's best just to be going, be reassured.
Yes,
and,
exactly.
Yeah, then everybody's happy.
So, anything else before I wrap it up for today?
I'd just like to share some books that are some of my old faves and some of my new faves.
Yep.
And so this, I think, they're good books to read if you're interested in reading.
We love reading.
Lots of people don't seem to be interested in books anymore, but I really quite like them.
Sure, you could probably get them as audios or something these days.
You can. So Spiritual Midwifery by Ina May Gaskin. She is a legend, pioneer midwife. I read this book a long time ago. I can't remember how many years, but I do recommend this book. It's got some great wisdom in there.
She's incredible.
She is incredible. Mutual friend of ours.
Yes, I read this one. Beautiful. Love it.
Dr. Sarah Buckley. She's doing great pioneering information, getting lots of information out there for women. So this is her book, which I highly recommend as well.
And she's a local lady.
She is a local lady. Gentle birth, gentle mothering. Great, lots of great gems in this book. One of my personal favourites, Sheila Kitzinger. Now, birth and sex. some people,
Oh.
they're thinking, right, what do I do with this? But Sheila puts this in a really good way of just explaining that those same hormones that are released during labour, during just the whole bonding stage with your baby, they're similar, or the same actually, hormones that also get released during intimacy and orgasm.
Yes.
So this is an amazing book.
It's so good.
And I actually had the pleasure of meeting her before she passed over and interviewing her. An incredible woman she is. She has many books, so look her up.
Yeah.
Always a little bit controversial.
Oh, I don't know this one.
Michel Adonti is a French obstetrician.
Oh, yes, I know him. Yes.
Who was pioneering
He's
the
great
way, in more modern ways of medicine and an integrative approach as well.
He does have some interesting approaches.
He does have some interesting approaches. So this one's called Childbirth, the Evolution of Homo sapiens. And in this one he does touch on what induction can also do. So I think that this is a good one to have a read. Now, this one is not related to birth, but this is the book by Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep. So this is the book that has the information in there about that REM cycle that gets that happens just before bubbies are born.
I haven't read this one yet.
Yes,
but I do have it.
Yes, I do.
Courtesy of Rachel.
I know. So this is also, I found my way to this book by a really good friend of mine, and it's called Pussy.
Pussy Reclamation.
Reclamation.
Yeah.
This is by Mama Gina, who has a school in New York City, and basically this really is just bringing women back to our juiciness, back to our femininity, and it's really beautiful. I mean, this really helps you as a woman just integrate those deeper parts of yourself that you know to be true, that we try to sweep under the carpet and hide and not talk about. This, I think, when you've got a good sense of that self, I think that really helps you in your birthing experience.
Incredible. I think you can all see why I think this woman is amazing, not just as a woman, but as a birth professional.
Shucks.
Just the wealth of information, and, we are very, very close friends. So, I've watched...
Close friends?
She's my bestie. She's my bestie. And I've watched her going, through all of her birthing everything, and it's been incredible. It's been incredible to watch the stories, because quite often, I am the person she debriefs with at all times of the day or night.
Through tears and anger and sadness and elation and all of it.
Yeah. And so that's why I know how amazing she is and why I knew she would add so much value to this birth story series. So I want to thank you for joining me here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for joining us here today. And if you do have any questions, please pop them in the comments below and we will answer them as soon as we can. And if you do feel like you need any help or support with your birthing experience, or to help redefine that birthing experience, then please do get in touch with me, or you can check out my Motherhood Rite of Passage online program. It's super helpful for many women. They've found it's really helped them understand and integrate that whole birthing experience and come out the other side. You're really embracing the transformation that's taken place. So I think we can finish it there today.
Correct.
Remember that transformation comes from within. Absolutely. And until I see you again, I'm sending you all so much love. Thank you for joining us.